hay por aquí? Cuéntame que me vas a
Welcome, listener. Bienvenido, oyente, to our episode número 4. I am Yesenia with the J Chavez, here with
Jaime, also with a J, Mallorquin, and we are once again your hosts, your guides, your cuento curators for this mostly Latina, Latino, Latinx y Latine storytelling podcast, ¿Qué me cuentas? ¿Qué me cuentas tú?
Bueno, hola everyone, ¿cómo están? ¿Cómo han estado? I'll pause for your response. Wow, okay, awesome. I love that. Or I'm so sorry to hear that, depending on what you replied. Things have been somewhat tough for us here a little bit, but we hope you still love us porque tenemos más cuentos para compartir, and I'm sure some of you out there have stories you'd like to share. So let's do this. Our theme this month is ¿Cómo te llamas? Stories about names. We talk a lot about identity here, and your name is literally your identity. It's a huge part of who you are. So let's just jump right into our first cuento by my co-host Jaime Mallorquin with this piece he titled Jamie Major Queen.
My first name is Jaime, last name Mallorquin. Simple enough. Growing up in Southeast LA, Jaime was pretty common as Jose, Jesus, Juan, and all the other Jota names. As common as James in English. In school, I often wasn't the only Jaime in a class. In high school, I wasn't even the only Jaime in my social group. So, since there was two of us, they'd call Jaime Partida Jimmy, because he was más güerito and kind of white passing, and I, for some reason, became Jaimito for many years. I didn't mind it either. I mean, I could have taken it as sarcasm since I was the bigger and heavier of the two Jaimes, and Ito usually means little, but it always felt like a term of endearment. It reminded me of family gatherings as a kid, where I was Jaimito who palled around con mi prima Mayra instead of with my brother and my other male cousins. But also I'd known a lot of these guys, a lot of my high school friends since elementary, where I was Jaimito the confident. Me at my purest before middle school had kicked my ass. And these friends had seen my rise and my tremendous social fall. And still in the 11th grade, they'd picked me up, dusted me off, and just handed me a beer like no years had passed. Being called Jaimito was better than the lost boy, as some kids had started calling me in the 9th grade because I walked around alone. I was named Jaime after mi tío Jaime, who was the oldest of 12 children on my mom's side, the Lopez Sanchez de Sinaloa, Mexico side. Según va la historia, my uncle Jaime, young and newly married, had his first child, Maribel. And like many men, he wanted a son, so he and his wife Bertila continued trying. Next came Maria Rosario, Mayra, Isela, followed by Azucena, Araceli, Bertilita, Diana, and lastly came Carmen Maria, his 9th girl and final child because he died soon after of a broken heart, a heart attack at age 30. Being born shortly after this family tragedy, I was named after him. So I like my name. Even if white folks change it to Jamie or Javier, I'll take Jaime or Jaime, but I don't like Jaimen because some folks actually add an N for some reason. It's just not my thing. And very briefly, my last name is a bit more rare, Mallorquin, through my dad by way of Acaponeta Nayarit. It's always been a struggle to have people get it right, and from what I've heard, it comes from Spain. It was a language at some point that was somewhere between Spanish and French, and it was spoken by people from Mallorca. In high school, there was a teacher who always messed it up, Miss Cook in the 12th grade. When calling roll, I'd always try really hard to beat her. After the last Martinez, I'd be ready to yell, Here loudly before she even tried again and embarrassed me. But sometimes she'd insist. Oh, come on, let me try. I think I can get it. Major Queen? Maricon? That's it. Maricon. The class filled with laughter, and I turned red because this white lady was trying to out me before I was ready. These days, I'm no longer Jaimito. I just go by Jaime because I'm an adult, right? I have never Americanized it because it makes me feel closer to my Mexican roots, and I feel like I'm slowly losing my Spanish, so I always correct anyone who tries to call me something weird like Jamie Major Queen. Although, that would probably make a good drag name.
Names are special and tricky too. You know, we have multiple identities with our names. At work, I'm Miss Chavez, and occasionally Mom when a 5-year-old slips up and then giggles a little. My brothers call me Yessie, and my name when ordering takeout is Jessie because I don't want to struggle. Am I right? Because getting my name said right can be a struggle, so I like hearing that I'm not alone and hearing about people's relationships con sus nombres. So I am very excited that we get to share this next piece from a lovely lady I met in my publishing group at Alegría Magazine, Virginia Bulacio. Its title is Mi Nombre.
My name is Nancy with an I, same as my mom's. My second name is Virginia, igual que el de mi mamá. But here in the US, it becomes
Virginia.
I never liked the name in English so much, Virginia. Sometimes, if they can't understand my accent, I say Virginia like the state. But in Spanish, it sounds like Virginia. And when my mom is upset at me, it becomes
Virginia.
Friends from Argentina will call me Vir. Mi abuelo, who was like my father back home, used to call me Nancita or Virgi.
Virgi.
I used to like when they call me Virgi because it brings a smell of home. It's like I'm traveling back in time to those memories, and I can smell the parrillada or empanadas argentinas on Sunday while the whole family sits at a table to have lunch, a few arguments, and watch a soccer match. Here in the US, I'm also Bibi. My baby brother, Ezequiel, or Ezekiel in English, before he could learn to say Virginia, he baptized me with Bibi, and I like it. It's sweet like honey, and I like honey. So when people can't pronounce Virginia, I tell them, you can call me Bibi. And some days, I wonder if anyone remembers my name back home. I wonder, does Bibi exist back home? Or only Virginia or Virgi? ¿Será que alguien recuerda ese nombre? Here in the US, for many years, I did not exist. Quizás porque no tenía papeles, or perhaps they just couldn't pronounce my name. But there's one day that I am dreaming will come soon, and it doesn't really matter the pronunciation. I can't wait for the day my son, 7-month-old, tells me for the first time, Mama.
Very nice. Short and sweet. And I love the production value with the different voices in that one. Gracias. You know, that name reminds me of my brother's suegra, who I love to have chats with at family things. Me encanta escuchar sus historias y aprender de su, well, her rich history. Next is a poem where the cuentista shares her history and relationship with her name. Here is Sarah Borjas with My Name Disappears from the Script.
My name was chosen on a night black as the back of my grandmother's knees. Joints burned in my parents' hands, one end to another, and smoke wove them together on the hood of a car. My mother says, when the band played Sarah Smile, I knew. Some words are so pretty, they never leave. She was 16. Her body rocked on the hot black top of her high school. This is not a dream I have. although I like to dream people up the way I want them. Otherwise, I, the girl with leaky tire. I, the girl with long slutty hair. I, the girl with mismatched boobs. I, the girl who makes the stripper the most difficult cocktail and the most beautiful. I, the girl who talks to my parents like children. I, the girl who listens to their stories and wishes to be someone else inside them. In the Bible, Sarah bore a son at 100 years old. In the Bible, Sarah is both the wife and sister of Abraham. In the Bible, God says things and they happen so. I, girl with a heart that has an idea. I, girl whose entire body resists the idea. I, unnameable duty of Chicanisma. I, converted Chicana who learns her Hebrew name does not make her white, even though Hall & Oates croon its 2 syllables the delicate way they do. I designed the anecdote. I talk too much. I speak around my name. I mix all the racket. Who I am, who I will no longer be. No wife, no mother, no child of mine to ever feel compelled. No woman's spitting image, no man's model of love. No one's daughter, no one's daughter, no one's daughter. My heart has a plan. God still asleep, and this is her, drunk and dreaming. I want to dream together, or at least be gone before she wakes up. If the name is a spirit, then Sarah, the absence of Abraham or anyone's spouse, or the obligation to the story that God gets drunk on, then retells in my voice on the hottest, clearest nights.
Sara, beautiful poetry. I really appreciate Sarah's piece and the way she describes it. It's a wonderful book. You should get it from her website or an indie bookseller. I bought it and I absolutely love the poetry in the book.
Yes, let's support these artists. If you enjoy poetry, Sarah's book of poems is titled Heart Like a Window, Mouth Like a Cliff. Yesenia has met so many great Latina writers at events and groups that she's been part of, even during the shutdown. I haven't done as much of that lately, but before all this, I would be a little social. I'd go to the occasional event for creative people, mixers. Actually, I met the next Cuentista at a meetup that was organized by my friend Ruben from the La Lista podcast back in December of 2019. And I remember her energy being very positive and friendly, and I knew that I wanted to work with her or just learn more about her at some point. And so I'm really glad that she agreed to share. So here's Jocelyn Lila Carrasco Glenn con su cuento Nombres.
Like Esperanza from Sandra Cisneros' house on Mango Street, I divorced myself from my name. Like anyone, a name latched onto me without my consent, interpolating my existence onto others. Jackie, by virtue of being the eldest, selected my name, a J name, because at the time, she was the only J among 2 brothers with A's and 3 siblings with M's. Together, all 7 of us made Jam. The ink dried, bringing a nameless newborn, a biblical nombre, and a gender marker looming over a Joshua Timothy Glenn. He was me, though I never felt like the him others expected of me. I wondered how names worked when I questioned whether or not parents who named their child Brad or Chad or Tad could predict that their kid would become fratty fuckboys. But I figured that names chosen at random and those planned alike come with some meaning. I even wondered what gendered a name and why. just as I wondered why God would not switch my body and sense of identity with those of a girl that wanted to be a boy. Even if they were still masculine, I preferred Glenn, or Adam's little brother, and I've taken comfort in the gender-neutral Pokey my mom coined for me, so long as I could avoid hearing Joshua jam into my ears when called upon by so many clueless mouths. While Josh made me a guy, a dude, a bro, Joshua put me up there with Angelina, Selena, Jessica, feminine sounding names defined by that final A. After the trauma of puberty that packaged anorexia, depression, and dysphoria as carry-on items, after the casual and ungodly trinity known as he, him, and his injected and shot into my flesh, my numbing armor had reached capacity. Something had to give. In the form of a slow legal process with the state of California, the ink dried, bringing a woman with agency, a new nombre and gender marker, a name that presumes white privilege until she enters a room, a name that reflects her gender identity, a name that is just a name all her own, Jocelyn Lila Carrasco Glenn. In this new union, Jocelyn honors the J of my birth name while acknowledging Joshua's magical journey from adversity to resilience. Lila salutes the final A I so desired. Carrasco pays homage to my mother's Mexican heritage, where Glenn derives from my father's Belizean and enigmatic Black German lineage. Though Jocelyn on paper, to this day, overhearing my birth namesake from across the room tenses every muscle, freezing a thought process in motion, a vestigial trigger that haunts me, alerting my brain that someone unveiled my conditional passing privilege and will nefariously strip me of the gift of disclosure. Outside fears fade into luminescent rays of light pinks and soft reds at the whisper of mommy, M-A-M-I, which immigrates from my partner's mouth to my ear. It sends shivers down my spine. It calms me into baby blues at the wavelength of mommy tossed so affectionately. Because mommy gives me that innate urge to hear it from my own some distant point in the future. In the meantime, I will sojourn in the bubbly yet unsure sound of auntie. Fumble for my 2-year-old sobrina, who first attempted to associate my face with a unique arrangement of syllables and sounds this past Dia de Madrecitas, because it means unconditional love. For that is the only name by which she knows me.
Jocelyn, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Jocelyn is a writer, a filmmaker, and an advocate for trans rights. And I can relate to her story, the part about not feeling like the he others expected. Though I'm sure it's in a very different sense, but also at the end where she describes the feeling of unconditional love that comes from whatever your niece or nephew call you. Because I'm called Tío Jaime, Uncle Jaime, Nino, and I love each name, but my very first nephew, Gabe, named me Tito when he was 1. And I think that might be my favorite name. My family's taken a bit to adjust and switch over to calling him Gabe, but I'm glad that everyone's been supportive and willing to adapt to the name he chose for himself. Because a family's support is very important, especially when it comes to something like your name.
No, pues I definitely agree. It's important to have a name that you feel comfortable with, that feels like you to you. And so I'll use this as a transition into our next piece by my very, very close friend, Teresa Zavala. It is titled Chita la Changuita.
In school, I was Teresa Zavala, the quiet, shy student who always listened, sat with wide open brown eyes trying to soak up the lessons of the day. I always did my homework, never spoke out of turn, and tried my best to follow directions to a T. Out on the playground, I'd play with my friends a serious game of kickball or tag,
and we would swing around on the monkey bars. To my friends and teachers, I was Teresa. But once that school bell rang, I would run home. I could smell the diced onion frying in the pot, waiting for my mom to add the sopita and the jitomate. While preparing dinner, she would ask, ¿Cómo te fue en la escuela? Bien, I would respond. I would head over to my room to do my homework like a good girl and wait for the bully of my older sister to get home. As soon as she got home, she would pull my hair, call me a nerd, and other names. But her favorite was Chita la Changuita. I would get so upset. You see, at school, I was Teresa, the good little student. And at home, I was Chita, the annoying little sister. One day, one of my friends called, and my sister answered the phone. Hello? Hi, can I speak with Teresa? My sister, at the top of her lungs, yelled, Chita! Chita! Chita la Changuita! I ran over to the phone, picked it up, and heard cackling at the other end. Ha, ha, ha. The laughter wouldn't stop. Ha, ha, ha. They call you Chita la Changuita? Ha, ha, ha. I was mortified. No one knew they called me Chita. How embarrassing. Everyone at school is going to find out. Sure enough, when I arrived at school the next day, my friends and classmates were laughing at me. They would point to me and call me Chita la Changuita. I wanted to run away and go to a different school. It felt like the end of the world. But I got tired of all the teasing. Chita la Changuita, ha ha. I thought, well, that's me, Chita. My mom gave me that nickname. If my family can call me Chita, why can't my friends? So I decided to embrace it. When they would tell me, ha ha, Chita, I would snap back, yeah, that's me. So what? So from then on, everyone at school started calling me Chita. And it felt good. It was a way of bringing together my two lives. My life at school, that was English only, boring and rigid, and my lively life at home with wonderful smells, sounds, warmth, and lots of love.
Well, I met Chita in college at UCSB, and I met her as Chita, and I didn't know this beautiful story about her name and how she turned it around and embraced it. That's how we gotta do, peoples. And with that, we have our next story from a gentleman I met a couple times while doing karaoke with Jaime at a bar called The Mermaid in Little Tokyo. Here is Santiago with his cuento. I know very well how I got my name.
Let me tell you a story about my name, how I got it, and who I'm named after. But first, let me tell you about a time that my friends and I were at a bar called The Rustic in Los Feliz, or Los Feliz, if you will. We're sitting in the booth. There were about 6 of us. The place is nice. It's cozy. It's loud. And they do karaoke. Our waitress comes over to take our order. I ask for an IPA. She asks if I got a tab at the bar. I do. Last name Ortiz. Now she seems a little bit annoyed, as if there were a million people named Ortiz at the bar that evening. She asked me for my first name. I clear my throat. I lean in a little bit. I put my hand on the side of my mouth so that I can speak to her and only her. And I say, Juan. What? She says. Juan, Juan. She leaves and puts our order in. My friend Jeffrey turns. He looks at me. He's a bit nervous. And now he asks me, Santiago, did you just order drinks on someone else's tab? Our friend Maestro starts laughing. You gotta tell him, he says. So I look at him. I tell him my legal name is Juan. He doesn't believe it. He asked me to produce ID. I do. He's speechless. He looks like he's just found out that everything he knows is a lie. I can only imagine what he might be thinking. Probably remembering the times that he has introduced me as Santiago. It was all a lie. But not really. I was named after my grandfather, Juan Manuel. I was born in Zacatecas. but my mom had already planned to move to the United States as soon as I was born. Thanks, Mom. Now, people started calling me Johnny because I was going to go live in L.A. I honestly thought that my name was Johnny. I guess my mom would tell the teachers to call me that. One year, for some reason, she didn't. It was the first day of school. It was the second grade. And it was not a cool way to find out that your name is not Johnny. Anyways, back to Santiago. When I was a teenager, I had a friend named Jamie. Now, this guy was so cool. I looked up to him. He's a little bit older than me by a year, 2. I respected him a lot. Now, he was well read, and at the time, he was reading Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. Now, one of the characters from the book and the movie is Santiago, which was portrayed by Stephen Ray. Really good actor. Now, without spoiling the plot of a movie from 1994, there is a part where Armand, portrayed by Antonio Banderas, tells Louis, portrayed by Brad Pitt, that Santiago thinks that Louis has killed Lestat, played by Tom Cruise. Okay, pause. If you haven't seen this movie, go check it out. If you haven't read the book, read it. Anyways, back to Santiago. So there was a line from the movie that we would always quote. The line was, Santiago thinks you did. Only we would say it with like this cheesy Antonio Banderas accent. Santiago thinks you did. And oh man, we would say it all the time. It was comical to us. We couldn't stop laughing. Now, we said it so often that our friends started calling both of us Santiago. And they'd say like, hey, Santiago, where is Santiago? Oh, Santiago's not here. And it was just funny. It was our thing. Right around that time, we lost contact. About half a year later, I got the news. Jamie had passed away. It was cancer. It went through him fast. I'm not sure when he was diagnosed. It came as a shock. I just remembered how fun it was when we hung out just months ago. I remembered all the laughs. I remembered that he would treat. Nothing big, a drink here, lunch here, a movie there. I just wondered if he knew and didn't say anything. By that time, most of my friends were already calling me Santiago, kind of as a joke, but then they started introducing me as Santiago. Now, they all knew that my name was Juan or Johnny, but, they just started calling me that, and the name stuck. I was Santiago. I started introducing myself as Santiago. To this day, people at my new job think that my name is actually Santiago. The name suits me. I like it. But I also like Johnny. I kind of have a problem with Juan because of the way that people pronounce it in English. They say Juan, and because of all the Juan jokes. I mean, it's just cringy. So, if you know me as Johnny, by all means, keep calling me Johnny. If you know me as Santiago, let's keep it that way, even with this extra knowledge that you have now. Now, if you know me as Juan, stop calling me that shit, unless you can say Juan Manuel. That I'm fond of. My grandmother called me Juan Manuel. Jamie, I miss you, brother. Thank you for my name.
I have to say that I also had no idea that his name isn't Santiago. Because, well, in the karaoke, or more specifically, Morsioki circles that we're both in, he is Santi, or Santiago. But I guess that's the point of this podcast also. Sometimes we learn origin stories. And I love that he named his cuento after a Morsi song title. It's very fitting and clever. And although he's not a writer like many of the cuentistas we've had, I know he's socially a great storyteller, and I enjoyed hearing from him and from everyone in this episode because our feelings surrounding our names and our nicknames are personal.
Yes, our names that we are given, or our chosen names, are really powerful. A powerful way to embrace yourself, embrace life. And I do feel like all of these storytellers really highlighted this idea about taking ownership of your name and just running with it and embracing who you are. Now, the theme of our next episode will be Yúbole carnal. Stories about brothers, brotherhood, hermandad. You get the idea.
Yeah, and we've got some momentum going this time. We already have our cuentistas lined up for the next one for once, and we'll be back sooner than usual. And I'm excited to say that with confidence, I think.
Again, we'd like to thank all of the cuentistas and poets who shared this time. You are all super sábado sensacional. Gracias como siempre a Alfredo Ávila for our lovely original theme song. Additional music was by the band Darker Places and my primo Omar Ramirez. Thanks, Omar.
Please help us out by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. That's very important.
For more information, visit our pages on Facebook or Instagram at Que Me Cuentas Pod.
Thank you for listening. Hasta la próxima.
Thank you, everybody. We love you.
¿Qué me cuentas tú?